Hello, this is Christine Price, and welcome to week 2 of physical wellness. We're going to be talking about counterfeits versus real solutions. And I'm excited to share some of the things that I have found in the course of my journey that have worked for me, and they've worked for many other people. So let's get started with the chart that you'll see in the back of the book if you have the book, or it is a download with the course. And it is the brain chemistry at a glance. So this includes all 5 brain chemicals and a general description of what they do. And then it lists several of the counterfeits that you'll see that mimic these brain chemicals. So in teaching just a little bit more about the counterfeits and to provide a review of these 5 brain chemicals, I'm going to include a clip that comes from a CD I did titled Nutritional Neurochemistry. And it does come as a 2 CD set. If you're interested and you like the idea of having a CD to refer back to, it's available on christineprice.com. It's also available as an MP3 download. So I'm going to just include, like I said, a portion of that. It's just about the first 10 minutes of nutritional neurochemistry. I'm excited to do this class. It's been a while since I've done this one, and I started putting this together and it exhausted me. I realized, oh my gosh, this is so much and it's so intellectual. So I decided I had to find some jokes to lighten it up. So here's a teacher joke. Sarcastic teacher says, "If there's any idiots in the room, will they please stand up?" And after a long silence, one college freshman rose to his feet. Teacher says, "Now then, mister, why do you consider yourself an idiot?" inquired the teacher with a sneer. "Well, actually, I don't," said the student, "but I hate to see you standing up there all by yourself." So that's why I'm sitting. All right. So we're going to talk about neurochemistry. This is the first 3 parts, or 4, roughly, of 10 ways to balance your brain and body chemistry. But we're going to talk a little bit about the different neurochemicals. So we make these neurochemicals in our brains out of amino acids, and those are found in proteins and other foods. And for every substance that we hear about or use or abuse or notice that people are using and abusing, there is a genuine article made by the brain. The brain actually will create something real. So the mind-altering chemicals are the counterfeits, and they are trying to mimic our natural neurochemicals. So I worked as a substance abuse counselor in the 90s, and so that was my first career. I learned a lot about these mechanisms, this biochemistry that goes on in our brains, and how powerful it is to balance that, and why that's a trigger, why people end up self-medicating a lot of times. And then in that self-medication, they obviously are throwing off the balance in their system. And it really is a delicate balance. And so when we work with it as a delicate balance, we can heal it. All right, so we're going to start with this neural network in the brain and think about the nerve cells. So if you think about a nerve cell, it's kind of like I'm holding a hand out with my fingers all extended, and these fingers represent the dendrites. And then I hold my other hand up next to it, and I hold it in a fist. And what you see with the fist is it's like that is the receptor. Okay, so these dendrites come out, and then there's a receptor from the next nerve cell. And so if we were to continue, then that nerve cell would look like this. There would be another dendrite, and it would just kind of continue on with all these connections. But you notice there's a space in between, and that space in between is important. They don't touch. Okay, so if you think about what is it that is communicating between these nerve cells, it's kind of like electricity, kind of like a telephone, if you think of it that way. In fact, if you think of it like a telephone, you've got the transmitter where you talk into, and you've got the receiver. So the transmitter is the fingers coming out. The receiver is the fist receiving the information, the communication. Okay, but what is it that's going between the two? Does anybody know? That is called the synapse. The empty space. It's chemicals. So it's a chemical communication is what it is. So a chemical has to leave the fingers, go into the synapse, and be picked up by the receiver. And that's how our whole body communicates, is through chemicals, more or less. Neurochemicals is what they are. So there's 5 critical neurochemicals. Well, there's a ton. In fact, I started looking at that, and there's dozens of peptides, okay, is one of those kinds of things, and different neurochemicals, but we're going to talk about 5 of them. Norepinephrine is the stimulant chemical. So it's mimicked, or the counterfeits are caffeine or any stimulants out there, so energy drinks, all the way at the end of the line probably is methamphetamine. That would be a stimulant, and that mimics norepinephrine. And we're going to talk about what you can replace that with, or how you can support that delicate balance in the brain. Because what happens when you drink caffeine? You'll get a boost, right? Your energy comes up. But then does it stay there? And is that a healthy balance? No, you crash, or you depend on more to get your system to come back up that high. So that's kind of the problem with using those counterfeits. And so what we want to do is find natural resources. But first of all, just notice what you tend to crave, because that's going to give you an indication of what chemicals are maybe in low supply in your system. So GABA is another neurochemical, and that's the other end of the spectrum. So it's a depressant, and the things that mimic that are sleeping pills. And so those are things like Xanax and Valium. Benzodiazepines are the other depressants, and so is alcohol. When people drink lightly, or just have that drink, it relaxes them, is the idea with the alcohol. So it's kind of like a sleeping pill. We'll go on to serotonin. Serotonin is kind of more of a mood stabilizer. It keeps you in the even keel. Whereas norepinephrine brings you up, GABA brings you down, serotonin keeps you just kind of in the even center. The things that people will use to increase that level are a lot of times foods, like comfort foods. So starches and carbs, right? They give you that kind of that content sort of feeling. And then SSRIs are the antidepressants that are trying to increase the serotonin that flows. It stays in the synapse. So what SSRI stands for is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So it prevents the serotonin from being recycled, so it sits in the synapse between. So it's hanging out longer. Then we have beta endorphins, and those are the pain relief chemicals. They also induce euphoria. So when you have so if you think about, some of us do like pain pills, and they just, for me, I really liked them. I knew that was the one thing I couldn't get into. So, and sugar is the other thing. It's kind of like a natural narcotic in our food. Okay. So you get that kind of sugar buzz or sugar high. And that's sort of that euphoria kind of feeling. And then we'll talk more. Oh, and then of course, if you move into the extreme things like heroin and stuff, they mimic the beta endorphins and then take the body way out of balance. Sometimes looking at the opposite of that helps you know if you're low. And pain is an indication that your endorphins are not kicking in. Emotional pain as well as physical pain. And then the dopamine is kind of a combination between a stimulant and an endorphin. So it's kind of combining both. And so examples of that, chocolate is one. So it gives you kind of that numbing effect, or that sort of sugar buzz, along with a boost, like a stimulant boost. And cocaine is the drug that would mimic that. And the other thing that happens with dopamine is people tend to want to get into fantasy pleasure type addictions, where they kind of check out a reality plus get a rush. So anything that does that is probably raising the dopamine levels. Examples are, they found gambling increases endorphin, or the dopamine, like when people win, and sex is another one. I would think pornography kind of would fit in with that too, because anything that has the boost as well as the euphoria kind of combination. Now, I'm just curious, kind of raise your hands, which ones you guys are more aware of as like might be low in your system? Just out of curiosity. Serotonin, okay, is lower. Serotonin lower, and norepinephrine lower. Okay. Is it okay? Endorphins. Yes. For sure. So I think those are three of the big ones. Anybody low in GABA? All of them? And it's possible to have all of them.
Yeah.
It is. I dealt with all of them. So that's why I learned about all of them. One of the things we want to do, and so this is number 2, is abstinence and detoxification. So when you have used one of these counterfeits to try to get that balance, it's actually throwing off the balance. What'll happen? So let me explain why this is so important. So back with our fingers coming out as dendrites and our receiver, when we throw in a whole bunch of excess chemicals, okay, in the form of caffeine, for example, the system wants homeostasis. That's the goal of the system, is homeostasis. So in order to find a balance after it's been kind of overloaded with a chemical, there's 2 options. One is to stop producing its own chemical, similar to what's come into the system. The second option is to create more receptor sites, more places for that chemical to go, so that it doesn't hang out in the synapse. When the chemical's hanging out in the synapse is where you get your high. It's where you get your excess rush or whatever it is that you might get from an excess. So that's your options. Now, what happens then is, let's say you do this enough that the body has adjusted so that you built up tolerance because you have more receptor sites, or your body's not producing enough of its own, and then the supply ceases for some reason. Either you decide you've got to quit or there's no more to be found. That puts you into withdrawals. Okay, so the tolerance builds up because your body is trying to find that homeostasis, and then if you change the system or change, what's coming in, then you're going to experience withdrawals. So then you just kind of go in this vicious cycle. To stop the vicious cycle, you've got to pretty much convince your system that it's got to make its own chemicals, and it needs to balance out the receptor sites so that it's in balance. Okay, now let's get into solutions. In looking at solutions, I want to make sure that you're aware of how much power you have to find the solutions that'll work for you. And this is an innate power we have within us that we tap into using kinesiology. So you're also receiving the download for kinesiology techniques, which is an appendix in the back of 10 Ways to Balance Your Brain Chemistry. And one of the types of muscle testing or kinesiology is pictured here, but there are several. And I'm going to go ahead and provide a clip from a class I did where I demonstrate kinesiology and several ways of using that to find the truth of what's going on with your body and what your body needs. And it also provides a suggestion that you use this as we continue with the different solutions that you'll be seeing. So we're going to talk a little bit about kinesiology. So in the book, and this is 10 Ways to Balance Your Brain Chemistry, I give so many different options and solutions. And my suggestion way at the beginning is to use some kinesiology so that you know how to prioritize the information and have a sense of what your body needs. So kinesiology is the natural, innate ability the body has to know what it needs, which is awesome. So we're going to do a couple of things with that. So first of all, we're going to look at kinesiology for our blood sugar. So sometimes our blood sugar's off, and if we can correct that, we'll feel better. So I want you to lift up your right knee and try to push it down, okay? And see if it holds strong, okay? And if it holds strong, good sign, okay. Now hold up your left knee, and I don't know if you can use the same, and try to push that down. And mine is weaker, okay? So much weaker, so much weaker. Okay, left knee is hypoglycemic, so that means your blood sugar is low. Right knee is hyperglycemic, so that would relate to diabetes and that type of thing more, okay? But if you have low blood sugar, that's where a lot of times people get hooked on sugar because you kind of have an imbalance, and sugar is more addictive, I think, sometimes with that. So isn't that interesting? Okay. And
they're both the same. What does that mean?
and you can have both. If they're both weak, you could have both. You could have a kind of a up-down blood sugar that goes up too high and down too low. And if they're both strong, then your blood sugar might be balanced. So that's the question.
Usually high.
It's usually so you might be high and low if they're both the same. Yeah. So it might be that you're sensitive on both ends. Okay. So let's go, and now we're going to do the arm. Okay, so we can do our own muscle testing with our arm. So you just hold out your arm and try to push it down, or say the word yes.
Does it matter which arm?
I try to push down my dominant arm.
Okay.
I think that works. So you're trying to push down your dominant arm and say the word yes. It should hold strong. Say the word no, and see if and it goes weak. Yeah. So that's a good way of knowing. That's kind of how muscle testing works. Is that by saying, by giving it positive information, you have strength. And by giving it negative information, you have weakness. So let me show you the sway test. And the sway test is where you just stand and you pivot at your feet. And so you just kind of hold your feet solid on the ground, relax your body, just kind of clear your mind, and then say the word yes. And I go forward. And say the word no. I go backwards. Okay. So now hold up your charts, and this will be an interesting way to kind of see what your priorities are. So if you were to say, okay, the priorities, my body is weak. So you've got to set your intention very clear on like what you're going to test. So if it's a priority, I'll go forward, you could say. And my body needs more. And then you can start asking, okay, so my body needs more norepinephrine. No, I know I don't because I have anxiety issues. My body needs more GABA. Yes, so that would make sense, anxiety. Okay, my body needs more serotonin. Look how far I'm going. I'm going to fall over, okay? So I know I need more of that. I've been taking 5-HTP in the last week because I've been doing the diet that I'm going to tell you about next week. And that's the elimination diet. And I've been eliminating all grains, which makes it really hard to have enough of that serotonin, so I've been taking the 5-HTP, which helps, but I know I'm low in that. A priority for me, something I'm low in, is beta endorphins, and that's a yes, but it's not as strong as the serotonin, which is good. And my body needs more dopamine. I'm low in that. It goes back and forth. So I know that right now in this moment, I don't, because I'm doing something that's kind of stimulating, and I'm teaching a class.
Yeah.
But that fluctuates for me. And so I do get to where I kind of have a boredom, and I think we all do that, and we all have our thing that we go to that gives us that, boost or whatever. So you want to be careful with that, because all those things are potentially addictive, and so it's okay to have a dopamine go-to, but you want to make sure that you have a nice balance in your life, and you're not going to that one thing all the time. So that's something you can do. Now, continue with this, you can look at what you need as far as supplements. So when it looks at, so I know that serotonin's low. So I'm going to look through here and see which ones I go strong on as priorities. So my body needs more 5-HTP, yes. I need to do more mindful eating. I've been doing that already, so I don't need to do more of that, I think, because I've been really getting good at that. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the classes. CalMag Fizz is a no right now. But we'll talk about that one too. And then more positive affirmations is a yes, and anyway, so that's kind of what you can use. And you want to test yourself and get used to how you respond. And I'll just say, over time, it took me some time to get to where I was accurate with my testing. And so you just trust yourself, because that's a lot of it, is trusting yourself. And as your frequency goes up as far as your health and your wellness and your positive thinking, your accuracy also goes up with that, which is cool. So when you're in a good place, you're going to have more accurate testing. And then you can also have people test for you who are in a high frequency, and they'll get good results. So I test for other people, and it's been really accurate. But it's taken time. I've been doing it I think I started that actually in like 92. It was a long time ago. So I've been doing muscle testing for that's 22 years.